Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Now, I am currently quite sick, so my apologies if I sound a bit funny, but given my poor health and bad mood, what better time to talk about a bad game? So that's what we're going to do today with Twin Mirror. Now, I am someone who enjoys playing these movie style, make your own decisions type of games. I've played great ones, and I've played terrible ones. And I am very sad to say that Dontnod's Twin Mirror is one of the worst I've played. There are elements of Dontnod's strengths sprinkled throughout here every now and then, but it's mostly a poorly structured, poorly acted, poorly executed game that wastes its potentially interesting concept in really disappointing fashion. So, here's the premise of the game. You play as Sam, a man from a small town who left a couple years back after publishing an article that got the mine shut down, consequently losing quite a lot of people their jobs and livelihoods. He then returns to the town for his old best friend's wake. From there, he concludes that some things just don't add up, and strives to find out the truth, whatever the cost. This is a pretty generic, standard domestic noir premise, but standard doesn't necessarily mean bad. Some of the greatest stories ever told incorporate countless tropes that have existed within the medium and genre for decades. But Twin Mirror does actually do something a little bit different. Dontnod at least had the foresight to differentiate with the Mind Palace and the character that is called him. You see, your main character Sam has the ability to retreat into his own world and temporarily pause time to do so. This allows him to analyse situations and people in much greater detail. He also uses this to delve into his memories and view them from a third-person perspective. In gameplay, you use this to solve puzzles, overcome panic attacks, and plan ahead by running simulations to see how successful you'll be. And then there's also him, a figment of Sam's imagination that regularly speaks to and helps Sam make decisions in his life. In some scenarios, if you're unsure, you can ask him for advice on what to do. So when you add all of that stuff into the picture, it does give the game another element that should separate it from becoming generic. There's another element to the mystery. What is this Mind Palace? Who is this random guy in your head? There's a cool idea here, but its execution is disgustingly poor. None of this stuff is even touched upon by the game until a 20-minute section before the final chapter, where it feels as though they thought, "Ah shit, we should probably think of a reason as for why this stuff is here." It's evident that they thought of the idea of the game before thinking it all the way through. In general, a lot of the game just feels unfinished, and that's going to be a very popular recurring motif as we get further into the video. It's not unfinished in the sense of it has bugs. I didn't really notice many, if any, bugs. But in the sense of it seems as though the narrative doesn't really fulfill anybody's arc in a satisfying manner. It feels as though they wanted to do a lot more with the game, but eventually decided to just get it out the door. Which is a shame, because I do see some potential in its idea. If there's one thing that Dontnod are brilliant at, it's creating the atmosphere of a depressed, lonely, small town in creative purgatory. And that rings true in this game as well. As soon as you arrive, everything just feels bleak, with the funeral of your former best friend, people are understandingly sad, but nobody ever really gets happy again either. Everyone you speak to is just getting by, and trying to find a way to keep going. With some actually blaming the player character for the sake of the town, as it was his journalism that shut down the mines. It's a shame then that a setting these developers are seasoned professionals in cultivating, with as much potential as this, is wasted as you fly through these moments so quickly that none of it has enough time to breathe. This also rings true for the ending, which I won't spoil here. There won't even be a spoiler warning or anything. But I got all of the endings as I platinumed the game, but they all just feel very abrupt. Prior to the final showdown, it really feels as though you're getting to the end of the first chapter of a better, more fleshed out game, and then it just ends. And there wasn't enough character development for anybody for it to hold even a smidge of impact. In fact, some of the endings reveal plot threads that would set this game up for a brilliant next chapter. Not a sequel, a next chapter. But you just get this information at the end and then the game ends. The whole thing just feels undercooked, like they had a concept for a story, but ran out of time or lost focus creatively and decided to just release it anyway. There's only 4 characters, including yourself, that appear in, I would say, more than 5 scenes, and one of them especially has zero influence on the game at all. They're just kind of there to influence your final decision at the end. The story structure is just all over the place, and it really doesn't work. It feels like they wanted to add a bunch of stuff but didn't for whatever reason. The game brings up a bunch of plot threads that just don't go anywhere. As soon as the game gets interesting, it just ends, as I mentioned before. It really does feel like the first chapter of a 5-chapter story. What doesn't help at all is that the voice acting is really wooden and expressionless. In fairness to the cast, they've not really been given a great script to work with, but the whole thing feels so emotionless. We're dealing in the aftermath of families falling apart, towns essentially being destroyed, and it just sounds like the characters are reading from a PowerPoint screen. I don't feel that it helps things at all.
No. Last night, pills and alcohol mixed. It's all a blur. That's why I'm looking for Dennis.
The game does, however, feature some pretty good cinematography, which is no surprise given it's one of Dontnod's biggest strengths. The gameplay is also literally just looking at things until you look at the right thing that advances the story. These type of games rarely have good gameplay, but I found this one even more monotonous than most, and given the amount of these type of games I've played, that is really saying something. It's also not helped by a patchy frame rate, which is insane given there's never really much going on screen, and annoyingly, really long loading screens. Dontnod always pack their areas, interior areas specifically, with a lot of great environmental storytelling, and that is still the case here, but it's still annoying that it still feels monotonous getting from one area to the next, even though there's not enough going on to really warrant it. Twin Mirror is a very annoying game because from an objective standpoint, almost everything about the game is bad, but I can see what they wanted to do. The conflict of whether it's better to be blissfully ignorant or better to risk yourself in order to see the truth is a good theme for a game. As Him says, the world is an ugly place when you can really see it. That's a good hypothesis to build a foundation on, but it didn't commit hard enough, and the entire game feels undercooked as a result. In fact, these type of games that Dontnod have been making post Life is Strange, I'm really just not that big on. I'm not talking about the likes of Vampire, however it's pronounced, and the new one that came out a couple months back, which I can't remember the name of, that's meant to be good. I'm talking more about Twin Mirror and Tell Me Why. I didn't like Tell Me Why either. Tell Me Why was at least better than Twin Mirror. Twin Mirror is a very bad game. I think the only way I could ever recommend this to anybody is if it appeared for free on some sort of gaming subscription or a free play weekend. I think I bought the game for $5, and I don't miss the $5, I miss the 4 or 5 hours I spent with the game. But enough cooking on Twin Mirror for absolutely no reason. I'm ill, so this video is going to end. I hope you did enjoy it. Please, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, let me know in the comments. That'd do great for me. And if you want to see more videos from me, you can always consider subscribing, as I upload every single week, and I'm not usually ill. But that is all. Have a nice day, and goodbye.